Some forests do not grow in silence. They grow around secrets, and the men sworn to protect them sometimes become the only witnesses to things that should never have existed. Because across the vast wilderness of America, there are ranger reports filed under routine incident numbers that hide moments of pure, unexplainable terror. And this is the story of 3 forest rangers whose patrol logs quietly disappeared after what they encountered in the dark. The first was Daniel Mercer, a senior ranger stationed near Yellowstone National Park, a man who had spent 15 years navigating geothermal basins and predator corridors without ever believing in monsters, until late October when temperatures dropped sharply and wildlife behavior shifted in ways he could not explain. As elk herds gathered tightly in open meadows long before dusk and wolves refused to cross certain tree lines, and during one routine fire watch rotation, Mercer noticed a stillness that felt unnatural, as if the forest itself were holding its breath. Then through a break in the pines he saw a vertical silhouette, impossibly tall and unnaturally narrow, standing motionless at the edge of a clearing nearly 200 yards away, and though distance distorted details, he was certain it was facing him, not moving, not swaying, just watching. And when he lifted his binoculars, the shape was gone as though erased from existence. Yet that night, around his isolated watchtower, he discovered a ring of footprints, pressed deep into frost-hardened soil, each print elongated and narrow, spaced too far apart for any human stride, circling the tower in a perfect pattern as if something had paced around him methodically while he slept. And over the following week, radio interference plagued his sector, strange static bursts interrupting communication at precisely 2:17 a.m. every night, accompanied by faint rhythmic thuds that ground crews later blamed on thermal contraction of wood. Though Mercer knew the difference between settling timber and deliberate steps, and matters escalated when 2 hikers vanished along a lesser-used trail near the Lamar Valley, their tent discovered intact with supplies untouched and boots still inside. No signs of struggle, no drag marks, no blood, only a spiral pattern carved into the dirt behind the campsite that matched the circular footprint formation around his tower. And though search teams combed the area for days using thermal drones and canine units, nothing was found except Mercer's growing certainty that something was marking territory. Not hunting randomly, but observing patterns, studying human movement. And one final night, as he sat inside the tower documenting his concerns, he saw from the corner of his eye a tall shadow pass directly beneath the structure, blocking out moonlight for several long seconds before silence returned. And the following morning, Mercer submitted a detailed report that was never formally logged, transferred out within a week citing personal reasons, while maintenance crews later dismantled the old watchtower entirely without explanation. The second ranger, Emily Crow, was assigned to a dense coastal sector near Olympic National Park, where rainforests swallow sound and fog lingers like a living presence. And her encounter began with a distress signal pinging repeatedly from an emergency band along an off-limit backcountry trail that had been closed due to unstable terrain. Yet no hikers were registered in that zone, and when she followed the coordinates through thick undergrowth, she found a small campsite with a single tent zipped from the inside yet completely empty, sleeping bag flattened as if someone had lain there moments before, a lantern still warm, and in the center of the clearing a handheld radio transmitting low, uneven breathing that did not match any human rhythm she recognized. And as she knelt to inspect it, her own call sign crackled over her shoulder, radio spoken in her exact voice from somewhere deeper in the forest, repeating her name softly, not distorted but perfectly mimicked. And she felt the primal instinct to run, yet training forced her to document everything. And as dusk settled, the fog thickened unnaturally fast, muffling the forest until even her footsteps sounded distant. And then branches snapped in a wide circle around her position, moving clockwise without revealing a source. Each snap spaced evenly as if something invisible paced her perimeter. And she reported later that the breathing from the abandoned radio began syncing with her own heartbeat until she could no longer distinguish which rhythm was hers. And when backup finally arrived, the campsite had vanished entirely. No tent, no gear, not even flattened grass, leaving Crow standing in an untouched clearing holding a silent radio that forensic analysis later confirmed had no battery inside it at all. And though officials dismissed her report as stress-induced misperception, she resigned within months after claiming she continued to hear her own voice calling from wooded areas even when off-duty. Meanwhile, far east along the remote stretches of the Appalachian Trail, veteran ranger Thomas Hale experienced phenomena he spent 30 years insisting could not be real, until one autumn night when reports of drifting blue lights beyond a restricted ravine drew him off trail under a thin crescent moon, and he saw them hovering between trees, pale orbs gliding soundlessly several feet above ground, weaving through trunks without casting shadows, and when he approached, his flashlight flickered violently before dying, plunging him into darkness broken only by the cold glow of those lights. And then he heard synchronized footsteps circling him slowly in the brush, though no bodies were visible, the earth trembling subtly beneath his boots as if something massive moved just outside perception. And as the orbs converged into a single brighter glow, he felt a pressure in his chest, like the air itself had thickened. And in that moment he understood with absolute clarity that whatever controlled those lights was not merely wandering but herding him toward the ravine's edge where steep rock dropped into blackness. And only by sheer instinct did he retreat backward step by step until the glow dissipated and sound returned to the forest. Yet the next morning investigators found impressions along the ravine rim shaped not like boots nor animal tracks but elongated depressions, burned slightly into soil as though heat had touched the ground without flame. And Hale's official statement was condensed into a single sentence in public records, while the rest was sealed for reasons never disclosed. The forest remembers patterns even when humans forget them, and months after these incidents, each ranger began to realize their encounters were not isolated but connected by subtle details hidden within archived dispatch times, overlapping dates, and recurring coordinates that formed a rough triangular alignment stretching from Yellowstone National Park to Olympic National Park and across to the Appalachian Trail, suggesting not coincidence but movement, as if something vast migrated silently between the nation's deepest wilderness corridors, following no known wildlife route yet appearing where human presence thinned to near zero. And Daniel Mercer, now living in isolation, admitted in private correspondence that he continued waking at exactly 2:17 a.m., hearing faint circular pacing outside his rural home despite miles separating him from Yellowstone, while Emily Crow documented recurring electronic interference in any wooded region she visited as though proximity to dense tree cover triggered unseen surveillance. And Thomas Hale confessed that on quiet nights he still glimpsed distant pale lights at the edges of ridgelines, though he had relocated hundreds of miles away. And independent analysis of missing persons reports across federal lands revealed clusters spiking in the same weeks these rangers filed their original accounts, each disappearance marked by eerily intact campsites and absence of struggle, reinforcing a chilling theory that whatever moved through those forests did not attack in chaos but operated with deliberate restraint, removing individuals without trace while avoiding widespread detection, almost as if it understood investigative thresholds and stayed just beneath them. And the most unsettling discovery emerged when a retired communications technician reviewing archived ranger frequencies found fragmented audio files timestamped within minutes of each other from the three distant parks, containing nearly identical low-frequency pulses buried beneath static. Pulses that, when isolated, formed a repeating pattern resembling slow synchronized footsteps, the same rhythm Mercer described beneath his tower, the same cadence Crow heard snapping branches around her clearing, the same tremor Hale felt at the ravine's edge, implying not three entities, but one expansive presence capable of manifesting differently across terrain, yet carrying a singular signature like a heartbeat echoing through wilderness. And speculation among a small internal review committee quietly formed around the possibility that certain deep forest regions act as convergence points where environmental conditions mask phenomena beyond current biological classification, though no formal statement was ever released. And as funding shifted toward technological surveillance expansions, several decommissioned watchtowers, including Mercer's former post, were dismantled nationwide under vague restructuring policies, reducing elevated observation in precisely those isolated zones where long-range visibility once existed. And hikers today continue to traverse these parks unaware that a pattern may still unfold around them, subtle wildlife silence preceding something unseen stepping just beyond sight. Because recent anecdotal reports mention elongated impressions found after frost, blue lights glimpsed near remote ridgelines, and radios crackling with faint breathing absent a power source. And perhaps the most disturbing element is not the sightings themselves, but the precision with which they are forgotten, logs condensed, files reclassified, testimonies redirected towards stress explanations, leaving only fragments carried by those who stood in those forests at the wrong hour, each of them describing the same overwhelming sensation, not of being hunted but of being measured, studied, encircled, as though humanity's presence in those vast wildlands is tolerated only until an invisible boundary is crossed. and somewhere beyond map trails and geothermal vents and mist-heavy coastal groves and ancient mountain corridors, something continues its quiet patrol beneath canopy cover, moving without haste, leaving circles instead of chaos, lights instead of flames, silence instead of screams. And if the pattern holds true, then it is not confined to one park nor one decade, but part of a cycle stretching longer than any ranger's career, a migration through shadowed timber that begins when the forest falls unnaturally still and ends when a campsite is found undisturbed yet empty, reminding those who read between redacted lines that sometimes the true guardians of the wilderness are not the ones wearing uniforms but the unseen presence that watches from just beyond the trees, waiting for the moment when the night grows quiet enough to step closer once again.